I used to think I knew my wife. After 15 years of marriage, I believed Trisha and I had built something unshakable, a foundation of trust, shared dreams, and genuine affection that could weather any storm. We met during my rookie year at Station 19 when she was working her first marketing job downtown. She'd drive by the firehouse sometimes just to wave at me through the bay doors, and I'd feel like the luckiest guy in Phoenix. Those early years were golden. Trisha would wait up for me after my 24-hour shifts, no matter how exhausted she was from her own workday. We'd sit on our back patio with coffee and watch the sunrise, talking about everything and nothing. Weekend getaways to Sedona were our tradition. Hiking the Red Rocks, staying in bed and breakfasts, making love like we were still newlyweds. Intimacy was never forced between us, never scheduled or obligatory. It was natural, spontaneous, real. But somewhere in the last few months, something shifted. At first I told myself it was normal. Marriages have seasons, right? People change, grow, need space. I'm not some clingy husband who can't handle his wife having her own interests. The changes started small. Trisha began buying expensive workout clothes from brands I'd never heard of. Lululemon, Alo Yoga, pieces that cost more than my monthly uniform allowance. She'd spend an hour getting ready for what she called her new gym routine, perfecting her hair and makeup in ways that seemed excessive for a workout. When I joked about it, asking if she was trying to impress someone at the gym, her laugh sounded forced. "Just taken better care of myself, babe. You should try it sometime," she replied curtly. The comment stung more than it should have. I'm in good shape, have to be in my line of work. But I let it slide. Then came the sleeping arrangements. Suddenly, she couldn't stand sleeping close to me, claiming the smell of smoke and gear clung to my skin no matter how thoroughly I showered. She started sleeping on the far edge of our king-size bed, and when I'd reach for her in the morning, she'd already be up, getting ready for another day at her gym. Our physical connection evaporated like morning mist. No more lazy Sunday mornings in bed. No more casual touches while passing in the kitchen. No more shared showers after my long shifts. When I tried to initiate intimacy, she always had an excuse ready. Exhaustion from her workout, an early morning training session, a work deadline. Always something. The lies were what really got to me, small ones. But I'm trained to notice patterns, to sense danger before it becomes obvious. Her gym bag never looked used when she came home, despite her claims of intense cardio and weight training. Her phone was always face down during dinner now, and she'd step outside to take calls from her trainer about nutrition plans and workout schedules. I started paying attention the way I do at work, looking for signs of smoke before seeing flames. The expensive new perfume she wore only on gym days. The way she'd come home looking perfectly put together after supposedly sweating through an hour-long session. The careful way she'd guard her phone, taking it with her even to the bathroom. My instincts were screaming, but I fought against them. This was Trisha. My Trisha. The woman who used to pack extra sandwiches in my lunch because she knew I'd share with whoever forgot theirs. The woman who'd show up at the station with homemade cookies for the whole crew. We'd built a life together. We had plans. But 15 years of marriage teaches you to read someone's moods, and Trisha's energy had changed completely. She was distant, distracted, like she was always thinking about somewhere else she'd rather be. Someone else she'd rather be with. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd just finished a particularly brutal shift. A house fire that took 12 hours to fully contain. No casualties, but a family left homeless. I came through our front door, bone-tired, looking forward to Trisha's familiar comfort. Maybe ordering pizza and watching something mindless on Netflix. Instead, she was waiting for me in the living room, sitting on the edge of our couch like she was afraid to get comfortable. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Nathan, we need to talk," she said quietly. Those 4 words hit me like a wall of superheated air. I've heard them from other guys at the station, usually followed by stories that end with custody battles and divided assets. "I've been doing some thinking during my yoga retreats," she began, her voice steady but cold. "I think I need some space to figure things out. To figure out who I am outside of this marriage. Yoga retreats, plural. I hadn't known there was more than one. Space? I repeated, setting my gear bag down carefully. My training kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation, don't react from emotion. What kind of space are we talking about here? I don't know yet. Maybe a separation. Maybe I stay with my sister for a while. I just know I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not, she said, her voice growing more distant. Pretending. The word echoed in my head. She was the one who'd been pretending to go to the gym, pretending to be happy, pretending to love me while clearly planning her exit strategy. Inside, I felt volcanic rage building. 15 years of marriage reduced to her need for space. All those nights I'd lain awake, wondering if I was losing my mind, if my suspicions were just paranoia born from too many years of seeing the worst in people. But my external response was measured, controlled. Okay, I said quietly, if that's what you need. She looked surprised by my calm reaction, maybe even disappointed. Did she want me to fight for her? To beg her to stay? Okay, she echoed, standing up uncertainly. I'm going to stay at Sarah's tonight. Give us both some time to think. I nodded and watched her walk upstairs to pack a bag. My wife of 15 years, moving through our house like a stranger, already mentally checked out of our life together. But as I stood there in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of our shared life, photos from Sedona, the couch we'd picked out together, the coffee table she'd insisted on refinishing herself, one thought kept repeating in my mind. If she wanted space, I'd give her all the space she could handle. Sleep was impossible. I lay in our bed, my bed now, I supposed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every strange moment from the past months. Trisha's carefully constructed lies took on new meaning in the darkness. The expensive workout clothes, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden need for space. It all pointed to one inevitable conclusion. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and padded downstairs to make coffee. My mind was racing, analyzing the situation like I would an emergency call. What were the facts? What was I missing? What should I do next? The coffee maker hummed to life, and I leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to organize my thoughts. That's when I noticed Trisha's phone charging on the granite countertop, something she never did. Usually that phone was glued to her hand or tucked under her pillow. She must have forgotten it in her hurry to pack and leave. The screen lit up with a text notification, then another, and another. I tried to ignore it at first. Despite everything, I respected her privacy, believed in trust between married couples. But the buzzing continued, insistent and frequent. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. The phone wasn't locked. Something new, since she'd recently started leaving it unlocked for convenience. Now I understood why. She wanted quick access for her secret communications. Multiple messages from Ethan Jim were lighting up the screen. Even from the preview notifications, I could see enough to make my blood run cold. Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow. Your husband still doesn't know, right? We're still safe. Last night was incredible. You taste like... My hands shook as I opened a message thread. What I found was months of explicit exchanges. Detailed descriptions of their physical encounters, plans for their next meeting, photos that made me physically ill to look at, and casual discussions about deceiving me. The timestamps told the real story. Messages sent while I was at work fighting fires, while I was sleeping beside her, even during our anniversary dinner last month, when she'd excused herself to the bathroom. She'd been texting him while I was giving a toast to our marriage. I forced myself to keep reading, my firefighter training overriding my emotional response. Document everything, understand the full scope, plan your response. The affair had been going on for 4 months. 4 months of calculated deception. This Ethan wasn't just some random gym trainer. He was a new employee at her marketing firm, someone she saw every single day. The messages revealed a level of intimacy and planning that went far beyond a simple affair. They had inside jokes, shared fantasies, detailed discussions about their future together. My favorite was a message from 3 weeks ago. Nathan's working a double shift tonight. Come over around 8. Park on the next street over like usual. He'd been in my house, in my bed. While I was risking my life for strangers, another man was making himself comfortable with my wife, in the home I'd worked 15 years to build. The physical sensation of betrayal was unlike anything I'd experienced. burning in my chest, hands shaking, bile rising in my throat. But beneath the rage, something colder was taking shape. Strategic thinking. Professional assessment. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a campaign of deception, carefully planned and executed by someone who'd looked me in the eye every day for months while lying with practiced ease. I scrolled through weeks of messages, memorizing key details and dates, hotel receipts forwarded via text, photos taken in our bedroom while I was at work, plans for weekend getaways disguised as yoga retreats and girls' trips. The most damaging evidence was a voice message from 2 weeks ago. Trisha's voice, breathless and satisfied. God, Ethan, I never felt this way with Nathan. Never. You make me feel alive again. I can't wait to be free of him so we can really be together. I played it 3 times, each repetition driving the knife deeper. 15 years of marriage dismissed as something she needed to be free of. My first instinct was to storm upstairs to Sarah's house and confront them both. Demand answers, make a scene. But my training kicked in. Assess the situation, control the emotion, plan the response. This wasn't just infidelity, it was war. And Trisha had been winning because I didn't even know we were fighting. I carefully placed the phone back exactly where I'd found it, noting the battery percentage and screen orientation. Then I sat in the dark kitchen, coffee growing cold, processing the magnitude of the deception. The woman sleeping peacefully at her sister's house had been living a double life with practiced ease. Every kiss goodnight had been a lie. Every I love you had been manipulation. Every intimate moment we'd shared while she was already sharing herself with someone else had been a performance. But now I knew. The enemy had been living in my house, sleeping in my bed, spending my money while planning my destruction. Time to change the game. I opened my laptop and began making lists. Evidence to gather. People to contact. Steps to take. If Trisha wanted to play games, she'd learn what happened when she played against someone trained to save lives under pressure. The fire was just getting started. The next week was the hardest performance of my life. Every morning I had to pretend to be the clueless husband while secretly building my case. Breakfast conversations felt like interrogations where I already knew the answers. Goodnight kisses tasted like lies. Casual questions about her day became tests of her ability to deceive me. "How was the gym today, honey?" I asked over breakfast. "Oh, same routine. Cardio, some weights. My trainer Ethan is really pushing me hard," she replied casually. The casual way she said his name, like he was just some professional helping her stay in shape, made my skin crawl. But I smiled and nodded, playing my part. "That's great, babe. You're looking fantastic," I said warmly. And she was. The affair had given her a glow that I'd initially attributed to her new fitness routine. Now I knew the real source of her energy. I needed professional help, so I reached out to Marcus Rodriguez, a private investigator who'd worked with the fire department on several arson cases. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from anywhere Trisha might accidentally see us. Marcus was exactly what you'd expect from a former cop turned PI. Mid-50s, gray beard, eyes that missed nothing. He listened to my story without judgment, occasionally making notes in a small notebook. Voice messages, photos, detailed timeline of the affair, he summarized when I finished. "This is better evidence than most cheating spouses ever get. What exactly do you want from me?" "Confirmation. Documentation. I need to know I'm not going crazy. And I need evidence that will hold up in court," I explained. "Court?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Divorce court. I want this to be clean and brutal. No negotiation, no compromise. She gets nothing." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Arizona is a no-fault state, but adultery can still affect asset division and alimony, especially with this level of evidence. My retainer is $5,000. I wrote the check without hesitation. It represented a significant chunk of our savings, but it was an investment in my future freedom. Marcus got to work immediately. Within 3 days, he had photos of Trisha and Ethan entering the Marriott downtown, credit card receipts showing she'd paid for hotel rooms on days she was supposedly at yoga class, and a complete timeline that proved the affair had been even more extensive than I'd realized. The waiting was torture. going through the motions at work, responding to emergency calls, maintaining equipment, joking with my crew, while my personal life burned down around me. My captain, Tom Morrison, noticed my distraction during a particularly difficult apartment fire. "You okay, Nathan? You seem off today," Tom asked with concern. "Just tired, Cap. Trisha and I are going through some stuff," I replied evasively. Tom nodded knowingly. He'd been through his own divorce 5 years earlier. "If you need to talk, you know where to find me. And if you need time off," he offered. "I'm good. Work's actually the only place that makes sense right now," I admitted. It was true. At the station, I knew my role, understood the rules, could trust my brothers to have my back. At home, I was living with a stranger who'd been expertly manipulating me for months. When Marcus called with his final report, the confirmation hit harder than I'd expected. It wasn't just an affair. It was a relationship. Ethan Williams, 26 years old, had joined Trisha's marketing firm 6 months ago as a junior account executive. The affair began within weeks of his arrival. They had regular meetings, not just for sex, but for dinners, movies, weekend getaways disguised as work conferences. "She's been living a completely separate life," Marcus explained over the phone. "Hotel receipts show they've been together at least twice a week for the past 4 months. Credit cards show expensive dinners, gifts, even a weekend in Scottsdale last month. The Scottsdale trip had been sold to me as a girls' weekend with her college friends. I'd encouraged her to go, thinking she needed time with female friends. There's more," Marcus continued. "They've been talking about their future together. I have photos of them looking at apartments downtown. She's been planning her exit strategy for weeks." That explained the sudden request for space. She didn't want to work on our marriage. She wanted to transition smoothly to her new life with her younger boyfriend. Armed with Marcus's report, I scheduled a meeting with Sarah, a divorce attorney recommended by Tom. Sarah's office was in a sleek downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and expensive art. She was exactly as advertised, a shark in designer suits who specialized in high-stakes divorces. "This is extensive documentation," Sarah said, reviewing Marcus's report with professional admiration. "Photos, receipts, communication records, timeline. You've essentially built our entire case for us." "What can I expect?" I asked. "With evidence this strong? Full asset protection, no alimony, and if you want to get creative, we can explore alienation of affection claims against the boyfriend. Arizona allows it under specific circumstances," she explained with a slight smile. For the first time in weeks, I smiled genuinely. "Let's get creative," I said. Trisha's announcement came on a Thursday evening, delivered with the same casual tone she might use to discuss weekend plans. "I'm going on a hiking trip with some friends this weekend, up to Flagstaff. We're leaving Friday morning and coming back Sunday," she said without looking up from her phone. I nodded from behind my newspaper, not trusting myself to look at her directly. "Sounds fun. Which friends?" I asked casually. "Just some girls from work. You don't know them," she replied smoothly. Another lie, delivered so smoothly it could have been truth if I didn't know better. Marcus had already confirmed that Ethan had requested Friday off and booked a room at a boutique hotel in Flagstaff, though I suspected they'd end up in Sedona, our special place. "Have a great time," I said neutrally. Friday morning, I watched from our bedroom window as Trisha loaded her hiking backpack, the same one we'd used for our anniversary trip to the Grand Canyon, into her car. She waved goodbye like a loving wife heading off for an innocent weekend with friends. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I began executing the plans Sarah and I had developed. First, I methodically packed Trisha's belongings. Not in suitcases. Those implied temporary separation, the possibility of return. Garbage bags sent a clearer message. Each item I stuffed into black plastic represented a memory now tainted by betrayal. The lingerie I'd thought she bought for me, the expensive perfume she wore on her gym days, the yoga mat that had never seen actual use. Her jewelry went into a separate bag. Sarah had been clear about this. Don't hide assets, don't appear vindictive. Just remove her belongings cleanly and completely. I loaded everything into my truck and drove to a storage unit I'd rented across town, Unit 247, paid for 6 months in advance. I left the key and address in a sealed envelope on our kitchen counter. Next, I called a locksmith. By noon, every lock in the house had been changed. New deadbolts, new handles, new garage door codes. The keys to our 15-year marriage no longer worked. The process server was scheduled to arrive at 6 p.m. Sunday, perfectly timed with Trisha's expected return from her hiking trip. I'd provided him with photos, her license plate number, and a detailed description of her car. But the piece de resistance was my call to HR at Morrison & Associates Marketing, Trisha's company. I'd researched their policies extensively. Workplace relationships weren't prohibited, but they required disclosure, especially when they involved employees at different levels or created potential conflicts of interest. A senior marketing director carrying on an undisclosed affair with a junior account executive violated at least 3 company policies. I need to report a workplace relationship that may be affecting the professional environment, I told Janet Williams, the HR director, on Friday afternoon. I see. Can you provide specifics? She asked professionally. My wife, Trisha Campbell, and Ethan Williams have been conducting an affair for the past 4 months. I have extensive documentation of their relationship, including evidence that company resources may have been used to facilitate their meetings, I explained matter-of-factly. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. Can you forward that documentation to my email? We'll need to investigate immediately, she finally replied. I sent Marcus his complete report within minutes. Photos of them entering hotels during work hours, credit card receipts showing business lunches that turned into 3-hour affairs, email exchanges where they discussed meeting in conference rooms for purposes that weren't business. By the time Trisha returned from her romantic weekend with Ethan, her professional life would be as devastated as her marriage. Saturday was the longest day of my life. I cleaned the house thoroughly, removing every trace of Trisha's presence. Photos came down from walls. Her toiletries disappeared from our bathroom. Her favorite coffee mug went into storage. I wanted her to walk into a house that no longer acknowledged her existence. Sunday evening, I positioned myself in the living room with a clear view of our driveway. At 6:15 p.m., Trisha's Honda pulled up to the curb. I watched her sit in the car for a moment, probably texting Ethan about their wonderful weekend, making plans for their next meeting. She walked to the front door with the confident stride of someone who believed she'd successfully deceived her husband. Her key didn't work. I watched her confusion turn to frustration as she tried again. Then came the knocking, soft at first, then insistent. She tried calling my phone, but I'd turned it off. At exactly 6:30 p.m., the process server emerged from behind the neighbor's hedge. Perfect timing, exactly as we'd planned. Trisha Campbell? He asked formally. Yes, but I can't get into my house. My husband... She began frantically. Ma'am, I need you to sign for these documents, he interrupted firmly. From my window, I watched her world collapse in real time. First confusion, then recognition of what she was holding, then panic as she realized the scope of what was happening. She pounded on the door. Nathan! Nathan, open this door! We need to talk! She shouted desperately. I let her knock for 5 full minutes before opening the door. When I did, she pushed past me into the living room, divorce papers clutched in her shaking hands. What the hell is this? She demanded, waving the papers. Exactly what it looks like, I replied calmly. You can't just lock me out of my own house, she protested angrily. Actually, I can. Read the papers. And it's not your house anymore, I said evenly. Her eyes darted around the room, finally noticing the missing photos, the empty spaces where her things had been. Where are my belongings? She asked, her voice growing smaller. Storage unit. Address is on the kitchen counter along with the key, I answered matter-of-factly. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Nathan, we can work this out. The space thing, I just needed time to think. We don't have to get divorced, she pleaded, her tone shifting to desperation. Read the papers, Trisha, all of them, I said firmly. She flipped through the legal documents, her face growing paler with each page. You hired a private investigator? She whispered in shock. I did, I confirmed simply. Nathan, the thing with Ethan, it's not what you think, it's just... She began stammering. 4 months of f***ing him in our bed while I was at work? Hotel receipts, voice messages where you talk about being free of me? What exactly did I misunderstand? I interrupted harshly. She flinched at my language. In 15 years, she'd rarely heard me use profanity. It didn't mean anything. He's just... She tried weakly. You? Exciting? Everything I'm not? I cut her off coldly. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. I never meant for you to find out this way. How did you mean for me to find out? When you moved in with him? When you asked for alimony to support your new lifestyle? I asked with bitter sarcasm. Nathan, please. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. She begged through her tears. I walked to the kitchen and returned with the sealed envelope containing the storage unit information. Your things are in Unit 247 at Westside Storage. Everything's there except your car, which is still in your name. The locks have been changed, obviously, I said, handing her the envelope. You can't throw away 15 years of marriage like this, she sobbed. I'm not throwing it away. You already did that 4 months ago, I replied without emotion. She collapsed onto the couch. Our couch, where we'd planned vacations, discussed buying a house, dreamed about our future together. What about Ethan's job? She asked quietly, suddenly realizing the implications. What about it? I asked innocently. The HR report. I know you sent them evidence, she said with growing dread. Company policy violation. Undisclosed workplace relationship between employees at different levels. Plus, in the conference room during work hours probably violates a few other rules, I explained clinically. Her face went white. They'll fire us both. Probably, I agreed with indifference. Nathan, you're destroying our lives, she accused desperately. No, Trisha, you destroyed our life. I'm just making sure you face consequences for your choices, I corrected her firmly. She tried several more approaches. Anger, tears, bargaining, promises to change. I responded to each with the same calm detachment I'd use at an emergency scene. Finally, she understood that no amount of manipulation would work. I'll fight this divorce. I deserve half of everything, she threatened weakly. Read the papers. Arizona allows fault-based asset division when adultery is proven. Your lawyer will explain that you're lucky to get anything, I informed her matter-of-factly. She gathered the legal documents and walked toward the door, defeat evident in every step. 15 years, Nathan. How can you throw away 15 years? She asked one final time. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm finally stopping pretending that those 15 years meant anything to you, I replied with finality. She paused at the door, looking back at me one final time. I did love you. I do love you, she whispered. No, Trisha. You loved the security I provided while you figured out what you really wanted. There's a difference, I said coldly. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Through the window, I watched her load garbage bags full of her belongings into her car, the expensive hiking backpack now looking ridiculous next to black plastic bags stuffed with the remnants of our marriage. As her taillights disappeared down our street, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. 3 months later, I stood in the same living room where Trisha had begged me to reconsider, but everything had changed. The house felt different. Not empty, but clean, like smoke had finally cleared from a long-burning fire. The practical consequences had played out exactly as Sarah predicted. Morrison and Associates Marketing terminated both Trisha and Ethan after their HR investigation confirmed policy violations. The affair, the misuse of company time and resources, the failure to disclose their relationship, it all added up to immediate dismissal with cause, no severance, no recommendations, no graceful exits. Trisha had moved back in with her parents across town, a 34-year-old woman rebuilding her life from her childhood bedroom. Ethan, I'd heard through workplace gossip, had moved back to California. Apparently, the relationship didn't survive the harsh light of real-world consequences. Our divorce was finalized without contest. Faced with Marcus's overwhelming evidence and Sarah's strategic brilliance, Trisha's lawyer advised her to accept the settlement rather than fight and lose everything in court. I kept the house, our savings, and my pension intact. She got her car and whatever dignity she could salvage. The silence in my house wasn't lonely. It was peaceful in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I'd rediscovered parts of myself that had been suppressed during those final months of marriage. I cooked elaborate meals for one, reading while I ate instead of making forced conversation. I slept soundly in the center of my king-size bed, no longer wondering what lies were being constructed in the mind beside me. Work had become my sanctuary. My colleagues noticed the change, not bitterness, but a kind of focused clarity that made me even better at my job. I'd become the guy others came to for advice, having proven that sometimes the right response to betrayal isn't forgiveness, but justice. Tom Morrison pulled me aside last week during equipment checks. "You seem different, Nathan. Better, more focused," he observed. "I feel like myself again," I replied honestly. "Any regrets about how you handled things?" he asked thoughtfully. I considered the question seriously. Had I been too harsh, too calculating, too final? "No," I said finally. "Fire teaches you a lot about destruction and renewal. Sometimes you have to let something burn completely before you can build something better." Tom nodded approvingly. "Just make sure you're building toward something, not just clearing ground." He was right. For 3 months I'd been living in the aftermath, enjoying the peace but not planning for the future. It was time to think about what came next. That evening I sat on my back patio with coffee, watching the sunset paint the Phoenix sky in shades of orange and red. The same patio where Trisha and I used to plan our weekends, discuss our dreams, build our life together. But those memories no longer stung. They belonged to a different man married to a different woman. Both of those people were gone now. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Mike in Colorado. "Heard about the divorce. Sorry, man. How are you holding up?" I typed back, "Better than I've been in months. Moving forward." And I was. The fire had done its work, destroyed what needed destroying, cleared away the lies and pretense and false foundations. What remained was solid. My career, my integrity, my self-respect, and most importantly, my freedom to build something real with someone who deserved it. Trisha had been right about one thing. We both needed space to figure out who we were outside of our marriage. The difference was that I'd used that space to become someone stronger, while she'd used it to become someone smaller. I thought about the voice message that had started it all. I never felt this way with Nathan. Never. "You make me feel alive again." She was probably right. What she felt with Ethan was different. The excitement of deception, the thrill of risk, the intoxication of betrayal. But what we'd had was better than that cheap high. We'd had trust, partnership, a love built to last. She'd traded something real for something temporary and paid the price when reality came calling. As for me, I was finally free to find someone who understood the value of what we'd thrown away. Someone who wouldn't need to feel alive at the expense of someone else's trust. The fire had burned hot and fast, consuming 15 years of marriage in a matter of weeks. But like the controlled burns we sometimes set to prevent larger disasters, this destruction had been necessary. Now it was time to see what could grow in the cleared ground. I finished my coffee and went inside, already planning tomorrow. There was a new recruit starting at the station next week, and Captain Morrison had asked me to show her the ropes. A fresh start for both of us. The Phoenix rises from its own ashes, stronger and more beautiful than before. It was time to spread my wings. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.